Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy, Making Lore. I'm your host, Community Manager Jared Huckaby, and with me today are the members of the CIG Lore team out of our Los Angeles office. Immediately to my right is lead writer, Mr. Dave Haddock.
Hello.
Say hello, Dave.
Hello.
To my left is senior writer, Mr. Will Weisbaum.
Hey, good to be here.
To his left, associate writer, Mr. Adam Weiser.
Hello.
And to my right, last but certainly not least, archivist, Ms. Sherry Heiberg.
Hi.
Hello. And these are your normal hosts for the Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now we're past 20 episodes recently.
Oh, really?
I think we've passed 20 episodes.
Feels like it.
John Schimmel couldn't be here because he's our designated survivor.
So if you've never seen the Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy before,
Or designated survivor.
that's where one of these fine people take you on a tour of some of the systems that are designed and will soon be available in the Star Citizen universe. Soon being a relative term.
A relatively overused one.
Yes. So we wanted to take some time today and talk a little bit about the process, how lore is actually made for a video game, since that's not a part of the video game story that often gets told. Not in my experience. I don't see a lot about the origins of story and the folks that create it and how that comes about. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched a little bit on in the Ask a Dev section on the forums and in previous 10 for the writers, but it's always great to flesh out kind of what goes into that and how we fit in with the team here.
Okay. So let's go right back to the beginning. What is it? November 2012? October 2012? When did we start creating lore for Star Citizen?
We actually started creating it that July of 2012, July or August. It was probably a month before the teaser site went up. Mm-hmm. So basically, Chris's announcement was on October 12th at GDC, and in the build-up to it, basically, he wanted to start kind of teasing that something was coming.
Yeah.
And so the idea was that we did this sort of time capsule thing, where it was every day of September, basically, we did a different post written in fiction, kind of moving the timeline from present day to the day of the announcement that the game was going to take place in.
Now, was this is the first lore that we released, but was this the first lore that was created for Star Citizen?
No, actually, the early conversations were basically just sort of very broad stuff of like, you know, and Chris has talked in the live stream, actually, we were talking about it at the Tavaran thing about, you know, looking at the fall of the Roman Empire as sort of an inspiration for, you know, this type of stuff. But a lot of it was very large scale, but sort of high level discussions about who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. That was what led to the sort of, let's make it more about shades of gray rather than black and white, you know, that type of stuff. And we actually ended up doing the time capsules were something that we did in our discussions for ourselves to figure out what was happening, and then we sort of modified them to turn them into the time capsule. So that was sort of how, because you hit all of the major points of what the major discoveries were in those 30 days. Okay. So you get jump points, you get Vandal, you get Banu, Xi'an, Tavaran War, Messer, Synth World, all that stuff gets kind of parsed out.
And it's fun how those foundational elements are still something that I go back to in my writing, like really frequently. Like a lot of our stuff stem from those original ripples that came out of that original timeline series.
Yeah, and not just for you guys, for our fan fiction writers, I'll often get requests from our fans. They'll go, "Hey, has there been a story about this or whatnot?" And I'll go, "Okay, I'll take a couple minutes out of my time," and I'll find some old post on the old website from 2012. I'm like, "Yeah, this is kind of what you were talking about."
We do get a lot of questions about like, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing a story about this. Is this okay? Does this fit in the lore?" And what's kind of nice about Star Citizen, the usual answer is, as long as it's a small contained story, the answer is yes. You can probably write that story in Star Citizen. It's a huge universe. It's multiple space systems. Everything can happen there. As long as you're not saying like a whole planet is made out of cheese, like It's okay. But if it's a small group of people, they can have a weird, strange, awesome adventure.
And it's like if the ramifications of it, you know, if you're writing a character who's like going to be the guy who shot Ivar Messer, that would obviously conflict with sort of our established lore. But you could write someone who was struggling against Ivar Messer, who, you know, died or went over to the dark side, whatever. As long as it's sort of within the framework, and it doesn't really mess with kind of the established stuff. There's a lot of potential to do.
While we're talking about the fan fiction stuff, there are writers' guides. We've released several posts.
I think it was ultimately 13, a 13 installment thing. We actually need to probably update it soon.
Probably.
But it was because at the time, we were getting a lot of, there was from the day we launched, we had a huge fan fiction section. So this was sort of an attempt to kind of put together a cohesive guide that was written outside of lore. So we could say like, hey, if you're writing for the government, this is the type of character that they are, and you should write them like this. This is how the military kind of acts, type stuff, rather than having to frame it within some kind of fictional context. But that way people could kind of go like, oh, okay, the Banu are like this, the Xi'an are like this, the Vandal are like this, but we do need to update them.
But I think a lot of that heavy lifting will hopefully be taken on by the Galacticpedia when that goes live. Yeah. Because a lot of that kind of bite-sized information chunks, we're putting effort into developing that more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time referring to some of the older material, like the Time Capsule series and the Writer's Guides, trying to do the first pass on all the Galacticpedia articles. It's been really helpful, and I gotta say, I really like the Time Capsule series. Yeah. That's one of my favorites.
So the time
They're okay.
So the Time Capsule series was one of the first things that we published, along with the Kid Crimson and the Cassandra's Tears.
Yeah, that was after the announcement. Okay. So basically, Chris ended up really liking the Time Capsule thing as a way to dispense kind of little bite-sized bits of knowledge. And so that after we did the announcement, there was sort of okay, so how are we going to we've started to get this massive interest, how do we kind of keep it going? And so he wanted to kind of keep that thread alive. So that turned into our sort of weekly news dispatch that we still do today. Like we do a week of this, now it's Tuesdays. Every Tuesday it's a single news article that kind of gives you a sense of what's happening in the universe and stuff like that. But then I was doing the Cassandra's Tears, which is Cal Mason's story, and Kid Crimson. It was like, I think it was like Monday was Cal Mason, Wednesday was News Dispatch, Friday was Kid Crimson till December. So
and those stories are still available on the website.
Yeah. You can go, if you go into the Spectrum Dispatch section, you can find all of the.
Okay. So before we get to the process, once we've started making the game, this is all before we've started building the game. When Chris comes to you and says, we're going to make this game, it's going to be this massive, sprawling universe, where do you start? Like, what do you remember the very first thing, the very first piece, if it's not too spoiler related? Like, where do you start when you have to create a massive universe for two video games?
Yeah, I mean, the thing, the Fall of the Roman Empire thing was a helpful thing because that sort of thematically binds you in sort of so you have an empire under strain, financial, military strain, and it's reaching a breaking point. As a kickoff point, that you have a lot to go with in that. I mean, to me, it always seems like, it's like sketching. If you start, part of the approach for drawing is you start with the broad shapes, ovals, and then ovals and kind of flow and pose, and then you refine the shape and you fill in the details. It's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's very easy. Or I would say it's probably very, very hard to start really, really micro and be like, I'm going to write out religion from now until the 30th century and completely develop that in a vacuum, and then go, all right, I've done that, now I'm going to do food, so like it's
every food.
Like it gets very, you're going to snow yourself under, and you're never actually going to build the big picture, so it's easier to start kind of big.
Yeah, we have, there's so many needs for us coming from a lot of the different areas, departments, like guns and engines and main storylines and planetary write-ups, that we operate very much on a need basis. Like we don't have time, unfortunately, to sit there and flesh out a full, like every Murray Cup racer since the history of it. We only know the years that we had to write about for particular stories, and they'll keep growing in and filling in as we need it. If we need to, like if there aren't requests at the Murray Cup headquarters for a plaque that lists every winner, then we'll have to sit down and do it, which that's a pretty good idea. But still, so it's kind of fun. Like sometimes we get questions about like, when did this happen or what is this, until we kind of focus in on that, it doesn't exist.
How cool would it be to have a Murray Cup plaque in the lobby of the office with all the winners?
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right.
If you could put in a Jira task for that.
Put it in a Jira task. All right. So that's before the campaign. The campaign is up and running. We funded Star Citizen. Now we have to start making the game. So you've got requests that come from story, the things that you want to see in the game. But now you're getting requests from designers, requests from game designers that like, we need something for this. We want to build this.
Yeah.
How does that process work?
I mean, as Will said, I mean, it kind of comes from all over. I mean, we'll get requests from item designers who are like, hey, I need who manufactures light bulbs, and then in the same day get another request that's like, hey, we're building this space station. What is it? We need to, and here's some concept art or rough things, or if it's from a game design standpoint, like here's what gameplay mechanic we're trying to satisfy, or need or moment or something like that. So yeah, it can kind of come from anywhere is the thing, and we just sort of have to roll with punches and kind of change scope.
It's been kind of interesting seeing the change as the game comes farther along our interaction with the designers, because I don't remember to speak to this on the dispatches. Like the dispatches a year ago, we would be pulling a lot more from the ether of like, this is what interests us now. Mm-hmm. And now the gameplay that's going on, the actual design, is feeding in a lot more into what we're writing as these releases and the content builds up.
Yeah, it makes it sometimes easier to actually tell a story because we know how that experience is going to be in game. So I have a question. If we're writing something about a data runner, I can go and I can sit and I can talk to Matt Sherman. How's the Herald work? Like how fast? Like what is it good at? What is it bad at? How do you foresee this happening? So it makes it a lot of fun to be able to provide those specifics or kind of even layer some of those in. So as people read the dispatches, they're getting this broader story, but there's one or two hints as to the gameplay that we're foreseeing and that we're actually implementing and building into the game.
You mentioned corporations. One of the things that is unique to Star Citizen, amongst other projects I've seen, is the sheer number of corporations that we have. Before we move on, talk to me real quick about why there are so many corporations and what that brings to Star Citizen.
I mean, it's basically kind of a testament to the sort of level of fidelity in the thinking, because it's not, hey, this is a ship, it's a shape that has these attachments on it, and just kind of go like, I mean, these things are really meticulously designed, and they have a lot of, I mean, all the components that you can, you can look at and stuff like that, and they're built as actual like kind of engineering things. So based on sort of the internal coding system, as far as the assets go, the different cooler, everything has this sort of like a tag, a code tag. So it's become sort of corporation codes, and that will help dictate, I mean, art style, all kinds of stuff. So basically, like, yeah, everything gets assigned to a company. So somebody, if it exists and you can sort of manipulate it, we have to decide who makes that.
And like in a lot of ways, it helps the artists in that once we come up with one item of that company, they have that style guide and they can go to it. But all that history and lore does make it difficult sometimes, because if there's like a space station that was supposed to be abandoned 150 years ago and they're using this prop to populate it, and we have to be like, well, actually that company didn't exist till 50 years ago according to lore, so those items wouldn't be there, and they're like, well, we don't have another version of this item, and that's happened.
Whose job is it to track all these corporations?
I think it's kind of a team effort.
Yeah. I mean, we do have a corporation matrix in Confluence that just lists all of the corporations along with various aspects of them, like when they were founded, what they make, what their visual feel is, a little bit of their history.
And for those who may not know what Confluence is our...
Confluence is our internal wiki that we keep to keep track of game development. It's our game design document, more or less.
And that's sort of your realm. I notice when anybody's got a problem or a question about Confluence, it's go ask Sherry.
Go ask Sherry, that's me.
Right. So in addition to Confluence, let's move into the star map. So the star map is one of the craziest things that we've put out. It's one of the most, if I can say so myself, I had nothing to do with it, but it's one of the most impressive things that's part of the Star Citizen experience in my perspective. Where did the idea for the star map come from?
I think it was an early stretch goal. I don't know. I actually don't know where. There was an early stretch goal that was was the printed one that we
Yes.
ended up releasing, but
There was the cartographer room, right? Then.
Yeah, there was
Oh, there's
an
that.
in-game
Yeah.
stiller cartography room.
yeah. But it was also the thing too. There's this sort of inherent thing, like we have, the star map is the known universe, and if a part of the aspect of the game is going to be, discovering jump points, like you have to make it scalable, the map scalable, because if someone discovers a new jump point to a new system, then the star map is going to change. Like it's not a fixed thing. So having an interactive version of it, had a sort of a practical need, but I think it was also just like, Benoit just totally sold the concept of it. It was incredible.
I mean, it's a fun thing to look at, but it's also, especially considering the history and the number of systems we have, it's so vitally important that we understand the connections between all these different worlds, because it does inform the history of, so if this system was discovered at this time because this event big happened here, we need to make sure that this was the path that people got to go there.
Oh,
so
that was a nightmare.
we came all the specific.
Because the map changed too.
Yes.
Like the map has changed about eight times. Like even just from the very first few days, where it's 20 systems, and then the stretch goal, the $4 million stretch goal was 50 systems, and then I can't remember, it was like 7 million was 100 systems, something like that, and so that's where it sort of stayed. But even the placement of these things, as tech was coming online, they were like, oh, actually we could do this system first, and so they started rearranging it to mimic that sort of thing. So it was.
And the star map is just the known system, the known known systems to humans.
Yes.
So
Correct.
it's not all the systems that'll be in the star system.
Yeah, the Xi'an play their cards close to their chest, so they don't.
Okay. So you have the idea to do the star map. There's obviously a lot of use for it. How do you go about creating it? It seems like it's a massive data entry thing. Not just the design fact. Our friends at Turbulent, handled the heavy lifting of the graphic design and stuff. But you guys had to do the data entry, right?
We did. We also worked with someone at Turbulent, Scott, who helped us out with data entry. He was a big help. But yeah, right up to the last day before we launched the star map, we were still inputting data and making sure everything was double checked, everything looked good, it was visually consistent with what our descriptions of the system actually was.
Yeah, I mean, that was another thing that really helped, because the need was there. It helped us focus in on fleshing out a lot of, some of the systems we would have, we would know the feature planet, and that there was 3 other worlds there, but maybe those worlds were just one's kind of a gas giant.
Yeah.
So we had to go in and really think, all right, what is this? And answering that question, because we're not just a procedurally generated universe, we want there to be reasons to go travel around. So really trying to give distinct flavor to all the worlds and all X number of systems.
Right.
Mysterious number.
And the Stars and Galaxies, it's not just science fiction. There's science to it. Who did you guys work with? Anybody, astronomers or anything like that, to make sure things are as scientifically possible or scientifically accurate as?
Yes, we worked with 2 master students of astrophysics, Stephen and Michael. Great people.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Michael.
Hi, guys.
And hi, Scott.
Scott. Thanks, Scott. So we actually have very, very fleshed out data of all the star systems that we have released to the public so far, with things like the positions of the planets in AU, orbital speed, the length of the day, the type of planet it is, and so on and so forth, so that we can put the data into the game if possible.
With the goal, of realistic feeling.
With the goal of realistic feeling. So we have this realistic physics, but we want to make sure that the system feels as real as possible. And so that's why we have these numbers.
With sometimes responses from the physicists being,
Well,
that wouldn't.
You could I guess you could do that.
Yeah, there were a couple of times when we really wanted to do something cool, and they had to say, that's not really a thing.
Shoved them. So
We're like, oh.
That was the death of Will's cheese planet.
Yeah, and that's why we don't have a cheese planet.
You seemed very sullen when we said no cheese planet.
Well, he said it was that close to the sun, it would melt. I didn't
Yeah.
understand.
So then he thought it was a nacho planet.
Yeah.
The queso planet.
nacho cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the other hand, they also helped us come up with really cool ideas. Like if we had kind of a general idea of a cool thing we wanted in a system, say if we wanted to have a really dense asteroid cluster, they helped us figure out ways we could make those scientifically possible.
It's been since I started this project, the one truism that I've learned is if someone says that can't happen in space, wait a week and someone will discover it. Because every time, like the discoveries that have happened since I started this job and really focusing on learning about space science has been insane. Like all the weird planets that people have found with their telescopes and picking up radio waves and stuff. It's been
Like
great.
the planet made entirely of diamond?
Yeah.
That's real.
Oh. All right, so before we run out of time, I want to get some quick lightning around here. How does, coming up, we've got Star Citizen Alpha 2.6, but then we've got Star Citizen Alpha 3.0 on the horizon,
Ooh, yeah.
which seems like it's going to be a much broader expansion of story possibilities. What's it like working on that right now? What's that process like?
It's a nice, interesting change of pace because Squadron 42, while being a lot of fun, was because it's a very narrative military drama or action space opera. This was nice to be able to have more different, weirder characters. So you could, because we're doing all of these.
So Will is in it.
But yeah, no, there's like just all the different the planets that we're going to and stuff like that. It's definitely much wilder characters.
Because in V0, you know, we're starting off smaller and we're going to keep adding and adding to it in V0. But in 3.0 is our V0 of kind of fleshing out a world. So we tried for like diversity and to really hit some interesting people just to start getting like a smattering of the kind of characters that we want to have there and slowly building out and trying to figure out. It's really complicated and exciting. There is.
And then there's Squadron 42.
Yep.
Squadron 42, the single-player component to Star Citizen. How long is that script now? How many pages? We've mentioned the page count a couple times, and every time we've mentioned it, it seems like the number has gotten larger.
Yeah, I mean, it was 1255. I think it's gone up a little bit because we added some generic engineer stuff.
That's a good release for folks. We've added some generic engineer stuff.
As
pretty sweet.
the game gets built out more, as Chris mentioned, we have that full kind of stuff fleshed in. It's kind of going back in now and taking a look at the in-between spaces is kind of where we're filling in. Like we have the two big moments, we have a couple smaller moments, but then there's like a dead hole right there in the middle. So we're filling that stuff in now, which is good, fleshing it all in.
All right, so guys, I think that wraps up our special edition Loremaker's Guide for the Guide to the Galaxy, Making Lore. Anything you want to say to the Star Citizen community before we let you go?
No, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your support. We really appreciate it.
For all the suggestions and comments and fan fiction and everything. Thank you.
So you can watch Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy every other Wednesday here on our YouTube channel and on robertspaceindustriescom. And for some people who may not know, every Tuesday there's a lore post that goes out on our website as well, following a variety of storylines.
And Jump Point.
Oh, and Jump Point Magazine, the monthly subscriber edition that also has original fiction.
A lot of it that's nowhere else to be found. All the short stories in there are currently only in Jump Point. So.
All right, that's Sherry, that's Adam, that's Dave, that's Will, I'm Jared. See you in the verse, guys.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.